I'm gonna very loosely moderate. I want to give the people in the panel the opportunity to talk freely as much as they can. What I plan to do is throw out some softball questions that everybody wants the answers to, and turn the panel loose to discuss them in no particular order. Try not to step on each other, and try to stay with short answers, because this is a very smart group of members, and I'm sure they will all have questions for some or all of you when we're done. So first question I'm going to throw out, and this is indeed a softball question. Why does this panel think Sheriff Bianco should not be reelected? I'll start with Tisa, and you and everyone else can talk after that. Go ahead, Tisa.
Oh gosh, so many reasons. To me, his basic unwillingness to listen to people and to finish conversations, really important ones, makes him dangerous. I'm also the secretary for the Riverside Branch NAACP and on the Legal Redress Committee. And some of the things that we do is we try to work on, cases, questions that we have people who come to us, and we have an alarming amount across the county of disabled youth who have had direct impacts with them. It almost feels like it's a target, like disabled youth of color being targeted by the police, and the sheriff's unwillingness to talk about this until he can do it in person without masks, which means, the youth are continually in danger. You can't have somebody who wants to kick the can down the road, who has is literally a card-carrying member of a hate group. I mean, it's one thing to affiliate or to have those sentiments in your heart. It's another thing to actually fill out the membership application. That's a whole new level. And someone who frankly is not really committed to doing the right thing with COVID, putting countless people in danger, the workers, the people in the jail, just the basic situation, but he took the money. He cashed the check and didn't spend it on what the mandate is for his role. And if someone is so unwilling to do that, then they should not be in office. Basically unqualified, does not have the humanity that it takes to hold that office.
Thank you. Thanks, Tisa. Joy, your thoughts?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. Like Tisa, she made a very compelling argument. My issue with Mr. Bianco is that this election is not just about Mr. Bianco. He is part of the larger national militia movement. This means violent creation of paramilitary troops across the country that will be called up again to produce yet another insurrection. So these pockets of what he's part of, which is constitutional sheriffs, which are, from my perspective, not constitutional, but being part of these groups, Oath Keepers, constitutional sheriffs, has a long history of right-wing extremist groups that later became actual armies in many countries, including Italy and Germany, and we know where that went. So they're very well organized, they're paramilitary groups, they are well armed, and you saw the results of it on January 6th. It is about Bianco, but it's not just about Bianco.
Thanks, Joy. Michael, what do you think?
I just want to share something from a personal perspective, in that for those listening out there, and good afternoon, everyone, I just want to state that I come from a police family. I'm originally from New York. My father, grandfather, great-grandfather were all New York City police officers. My brother-in-law was a New York City police sergeant. My nephew is a Suffolk County police detective. And I myself, I retired after 39 years working for the police department in New York, not as a police officer, but as an administrator. With that being shared, my father taught me two basic tenets with regard to the police department. Tenet number one, respect the law. Tenet number two, follow through. That these principles, you can apply them in different areas in your life, but he shared these tenets with me with regard to the police department. And in looking at what's happened in our county here in Riverside with, I'm seeing problems where there's not appropriate follow through. And also there's a problem with regard to respecting the law. I just see that it's very interpretive on the sheriff's behalf as far as which direction or which law he wants to follow, interpret, follow through on. It's all very subjective in his mind. So I have issues with that. I think that our listeners today should have issues with it also. And really, we've taken a good, long, hard look at different areas.
All right. Ellie?
Stephen, excuse
Yes.
me, Stephen, there seems to be some kind of issue with an unnamed square on this on the
I
screen.
see that. I don't know which one it is. Otherwise, I would remove it.
Okay.
So,
There's exactly one unnamed square. Oh, they might have come back. If
They
they make a
come back
sound
with a
again,
name.
I would highly suggest you get rid of them like
Yeah,
quickly.
no, I
'cause they
will-
seem like a spammer.
I will be immediately getting rid of them. All right. Ellie, do you want to close on this question?
Yeah, I'll close on this because, it's not just what's going on with Chad Bianco. I'm following up on what Joyce said and what Tisa said and what Michael said. Here's the thing that scares me is you look at Alex Villanueva in Los Angeles and what's going on in Los Angeles. You look at Chad Bianco and I'm reminded something that was said the other night. I was watching MSNBC, Chris Hayes, and he had Michael Falcone on. Michael Falcone is one of those police officers on January 6th who was almost killed because of what was going on. And he said something that struck me very strongly, particularly when I look at Chad Bianco. And what he said was, and I'm going to quote now because I wrote it down. I was so blown away by the comment. He said, is this Rosa Johnson?
Yeah, it is Rosa Johnson. Yeah.
And Abraham
Now-
Jacob.
Would you
Yeah.
take that name, take that square out completely, please? Whoever, there's three or
Marco
four names.
Rothmel,
I'm
Adam,
sorry.
Aaron, Brittany.
I'm
Okay, you want me to continue?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, what Michael Falcone said is that and I'm quoting now, he said, I have grown very concerned about police inserting themselves into politics. I strongly believe that this is wrong. And throughout my career and my fellow officers, we have stayed neutral. This is important. We have stayed neutral, not ever revealing our political stances. And what he was saying, and he went on, and this applies for me of Chad Bianco and Alex Villanueva and other sheriffs that are going through this around the country. Are you really going to protect me, or are you only going to protect the interests of the right-wing party of the Republican Party? And the way they're acting, the things they're doing, the things they're saying, and the way they are conducting themselves, I wonder, the question raises for me, you're supposed to protect and serve. Who are you serving? Who are
Yeah.
you protecting? And this is the concern. That's my feeling right now on this
Right.
issue.
Thank you, Ellie. Very well said by all four of you. I'll just throw in about one sentence worth of commentary. I, as a lawyer who's worked with the Constitution for half a century, I'm offended by the, I guess I call it the hijacking of even the word Constitution by these folks like Bianco, because they don't have the slightest idea what they're talking about. Every sheriff is a constitutional sheriff. I have no idea what they think they mean when they call themselves a constitutional sheriff. They all take oaths to support the Constitution. So it doesn't make any sense to me. All right, my next question, which I'll throw out, is this is important for our club here. What does the ideal candidate to challenge Bianco look like? What are the qualities, experience, and credentials of that person ideally going to be? I'll start, we can go in the same order. Tisa, what do you think?
I think number one, most importantly, they have to be highly educated. One of the problems in policing is that there's not a strong mandate for education, especially when it comes to community education. I think they should be highly experienced in community policing and not from a higher up framework. They should be able to say they have real experience in working with communities and especially diverse communities. They should be able to go between 3 or 4 different diverse communities, and to be able to communicate effectively and work with people to prevent crime, not just solve for crime. And I think another big thing is they have to have more progressive values, in that there is a strain in policing. A chunk of my dad's family is in policing in the Bay Area, and a lot of it is community policing, working with communities of color, working with people, drug prevention, things of that sort. And you have to have that creative, inclusive mindset to work with a wide range of people effectively. And I strongly believe a lot of that comes from education, a lot of experience. I would by far prefer somebody who is not a member of RSA, because I feel like their relationship with our communities is not healthy. I prefer somebody with an affiliation with a law enforcement group that has had to be more inclusive, and that has had to work with some of their issues at different levels. And that's not RSA.
Thank you. Michael, what does your ideal candidate look like?
Really, not to be repetitive, but education is key. Just what I've seen over the years for those who are looking to go into some kind of a law enforcement profession, you really need to have an extensive education in order to effectively do your job. I've seen firsthand from my New York experiences and from my California experiences that community policing is essential. You really need to have a sense of connectivity with the people that you're there to serve. And if that's experience is absent, it's certainly going to be a deficit for that person in going forward and in serving in a law enforcement capacity. And personality wise, it really needs to be someone who is diplomatic, is able to hear different ideas, different opinions, who can reach across the aisle and appeal to a wide spectrum, not just a select group, but a wide spectrum of people, and to be open to the messaging that the general public is putting forth to this individual, receptive and willing to listen and willing to consider alternative options. That would be, my feelings.
Joy, your thoughts? Let me throw a curve in here, which you can or cannot answer, but is there anything about the candidate, age, gender, race, in terms of the characteristics of the candidate that we should be discussing? Because these sheriffs are all white guys. And I know that I know the sheriff of San Francisco, she might be still a woman, she was a woman. And that made for some interesting conversations, but go ahead, Joy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I particularly don't have those the gender and culture issues, in that if we have a sheriff that adheres to actually doing the job. The current sheriff has only solved 72 less homicides than the rest of the county sheriffs in the entire state of California. So it would be nice to have a sheriff that actually does the job they were hired to do. The other thing is, I'd like a sheriff who follows the laws, not choosing the ones that they think that should be followed, given what they think are the appropriate to the Constitution. I also, the idea of that no one is above the law is a really important thing in democracy, and it would be great to have a sheriff that also understood that. Also, to root out excessive use of force, manage a budget appropriately, that would be helpful. Have town halls and install the office of an inspector general for an oversight, and allow that to actually happen, and not say a board could be created if you get to choose who the members are. So those are some of the items I think are really critical for a sheriff in our county.
Thank you. Ellie, you have any thoughts on what the candidate should look like?
Yeah, I think that it's important. I'd really like to see somebody. There's been other cities that have done this, that have found that their crime rates have gone down significantly. I believe actually New York for a while was doing it, and that is community policing, where the sheriff, the officers actually get out and get to know a community. They get to know a neighborhood. They get to know the people. And there's something that's beautiful about seeing children no longer petrified of a policeman or a sheriff because they know that person. And we've seen the videos, I'm sure we all have. I would like very much for us to find a candidate who really believes in neighborhood policing, really believes in neighborhood sheriff interaction with the folks. The other thing I really think needs to be brought up, and I would hope that we find a candidate who agrees, I want to understand why the coroner is also the sheriff. Why is Bianco, who has had 4 deaths attributed to the jail in Indio, why is he also the coroner? I mean, do we really think we're going to get an honest answer as to what happened? And I just find that to be insane that is a part of their job description. They're not a coroner. They're not a doctor. They're not a forensic scientist. They're not any of that. So those are things that are important to me. I'd really like to see someone who believes in an interaction with the communities.
All right. Moving right along, my next question has to do with the election of the sheriff. And I'm interested to know what the panel members think where Bianco is weak, where he can best be attacked. Where do you think his Achilles heel might be? We've already talked about some of his past memberships, but if you were the campaign manager for the candidate challenging Bianco, what would you focus on in the election?
I got that.
All right, Ellie, you can go first.
He's not doing his job.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is the number one issue. The guy is not doing his job. He picks and chooses what he wants to do. He lets you know what his terms are to do something. He's got an arrogance about him that is just detrimental to the safety and the protection of the people of the communities that he served, that his sheriff served. And to me, that's it right there. I would go after this guy's incompetency and his arrogance.
All right, Joy, you want to share your thoughts on
Yeah,
how you'd run the anti-Bianco campaign?
Yeah, that's kind of all we do actually, is run the anti-Bianco campaign. But I think one of the main things that we've seen that really brings independents and non-Trumptonian Republicans into this same mix is some of the facts that were identified in the ACLU letter about excessive force to the Attorney General. And a lot of that talked about things like not doing the job that he was hired to do. A lot of the weaknesses, certainly, I mean, the vaccine and the mandate is also an issue, but it's also weak in that God comes first and then guns. And I think there's an awful lot of information that we can look at where it shows that the service through God is the first thing. And that when Bianco is talking about protecting a Bill of Rights, he's basically talking about the Second Amendment, and that the Second Amendment literally protects the first. And that's really as far as it goes. The other thing is, since he been in office, 3,000 concealed weapons permits have gone up to 9,000. And so arming more and more citizens with permits for concealed weapons is a very big problem, as you can well imagine. And I don't know how much oversight that actually happens on those concealed permits, because the belief in the Bianco world is that the more people who have guns, the better off we are, or the better off they are. And that's a really big danger for our communities and for Riverside County.
Yeah. Michael, where are you? I don't see you. But
Okay, I'm here.
There you are.
All right.
Okay.
I would say
how would you beat Bianco?
I would beat Bianco by highlighting his biggest deficit in terms of addressing the pandemic. I did research on this subject going back to when we were last confronting something such as this, which was 100 years ago with the Spanish flu. And at that point in time, law enforcement officials did issue summonses. They did issue citations. They did issue fines. They did approach people who were not in compliance with regard to mask ordinances that were put in place to protect the general public. Anyone who serves in a public servant capacity, public health and public safety. Those are your two principal things as an elected official that you're responsible for maintaining and ensuring, and quality of life issues for people to maintain safety, maintain health. He's been defiant of that, and no one was above reproach in my statistical research, analyzing what law enforcement did in addressing the previous pandemic, anyone from congresspersons to other elected officials to city mayors, if people weren't in compliance, they were cited for that. And with Mr. Bianco's situation, he's just really looked the other way and said, nah, I don't believe in this, and I want to do it, my own way. So he's I mentioned a few moments ago, reaching across the aisle, being diplomatic, reaching out to people, listening to diverse opinions. He just formulated his own opinions and felt he was above the law. And that's very troublesome to me, because I think part of the problem of the prolonging of our dealing with this pandemic has been issues such as this, where the sheriff has not been actively involved in enforcement, and the virus has carried on into 2021. I think if you were to look at a focal point for campaign issues for your ideal candidate to run against him, that would be number one, top of the list, is dealing with the pandemic.
Right. Lisa, you're extremely politically savvy. What do you think? How do you have to unmute yourself? How do you think Bianco could be beat?
I think you basically have to run 2 campaigns. And possibly have another outside campaign also. But I think you run a campaign to motivate all of the moderates, progressives, liberals, everybody who has these basic human concerns and will not stand by them, to get off the fence and get out there and vote. Because half the time our problem is our turnout. So if we're all motivated to turn out around these core principles, then we will. I think you run another campaign that's somewhere in the conservative Democrats, moderate Republicans, even slightly Trumpian people, talking very, very plainly about fiscal mismanagement. I think you don't hit them on the social issues there. I think you, because they don't care. They'll forgive them as long as, it smells good to them and it's safe in their neighborhoods. But you have to reiterate to them, he's not solving crime anywhere, that he's letting people, dangerous offenders out for spite, not for any other reason, but for spite. And that it's a waste of money, building all this extra, taking this money that we might have all this taken back by the federal government. So I think it's really 2 literally very different approaches in very different neighborhoods that you have to make. You have to get the coalition of the willing, and everyone else has to be morally dragged by the money, because that's all they're going to understand is the money. Yeah.
So I'm going to make my own comment here on this topic. There's no question Bianco's not doing his job. He's not enforcing the law. He is selectively only enforcing the laws that he likes. The problem I see, and we had this discussion just before we started the meeting, is that the people who support Bianco like that. They don't care that he's not supporting laws that they personally don't like. So to pick up on what Michael said, I think the way you beat this guy is you have to reach across outside of the people you agree with, outside of our group, preaching to the choir kind of stuff. And you have to find persuasive arguments that will show how what he's doing, they should not approve of that. The mask enforcement, the vaccine, some of the more serious things. So that's what I think. So I want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to do one more round with the panel of closing remarks. And then what I want to do is open it up for questions from the membership. So if you got a question, start thinking about what you want to ask. And I'll start with Michael. You got any short comments to close up with?
What I'd just like to say that it's incumbent upon all of us to work together collaboratively on addressing this issue. Certainly we as a political organization, we're going to do our part to get the message out there to the public, whether it be through social media, through meetings, whatever it means possible, that we need change. We need a genuine change agent in that office. And if you have the idea in your mind that you want to run for public office, that's what you should have in your heart and soul, that you want to be a change agent. And I'm not seeing that with this candidate. We need someone who is dynamic, who is open-minded, who wants to do positive things for the public that he or she is serving. And those are all admirable attributes. And I really think that we should work together, stay in touch. This committee, we formulated it in the earlier part of 2021. It's come a long way. There was just a handful of members at the beginning, to be quite honest. And as of right now, we have 40 plus members and we're growing. And we put together a strategic plan for what we're looking to do in a certain time frame, and we're fulfilling that. It's very important for us to stay positive, to stay focused, to work collaboratively, to stay together. And I think that we can bring this successfully to the finish line. Just keep an open mind and stay positive.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Joy, you're here. Can you unmute yourself? I'm going to surprise you, Joy. And I'm
Okay.
going to ask you to talk a little bit about Bianco Must Go, what it is. And there are a few places right now that people can donate money that is earmarked and directed directly to get rid of this guy. And Bianco Must Go is one of them. So if you want to describe a little bit about what that entity is to the members, please.
I appreciate that. The purpose of BiancoMustGo.com is twofold. One is to inform people about the issues that concern Chad Bianco and hire and show Chad Bianco in the larger realm of what's happening on a national level. But the other part of it is to raise money so that we can get out the vote and raise money so that we can run cable and television and media ads for the candidate that will step out. The other thing is we can win. We have Dems plus 3.2 in Riverside County. So really the money has got to go out to the field for GOTV. This PAC exists because it would strategically benefit the candidate in waiting and all of us if they stepped out as close to the end of filing time as possible so that no campaign can be created against that candidate. But at that point in time, Bianco Must Go campaign would be in the position and is working to be in the position to make the substantial funding of that candidate when they step out.
How can they find your group? Where will they find it?
www.biancomustgo.com. And that's our site, and we're raising funds through that site, www.biancomustgo.com.
Okay, Ellie, where are you? The pictures keep jumping around. You're here, yes, Ellie?
I'm here.
There you are. Any closing? Well, before Ellie starts speaking, if you want to give money specifically to get rid of Bianco, you should consider going to the website that Joy just mentioned. Okay, if you want, that's for earmarked money. Ellie.
Well, I think it's important for everyone to understand something. We've got 8 months. His election is not in November. His election is in June. We've got to find a candidate, and we've got to find one yesterday. Okay. We need to raise the funds to assist that candidate. But my friends, we are running out of time for that person to even file to run. So we need to put our thinking caps on. We need to go to bed tonight and say a good thought on karma, please. Whatever you believe, we've got to find a candidate, and the sooner the better, because that election is in, I see Joy's raising her hand. My understanding is that his election is in June.
Yeah, I need to just say it is June. It's June 7th of 2020. That is correct. However, the filing period doesn't open until Sweetheart's Day, February 14th, and closes on March 11th.
I know, but that leaves even less time for a candidate to mount a big, I mean, this is going to be a big campaign. We have to understand that this is going to be a toughie. We can do it. I have absolutely no doubt about this in my heart at all. We can win this seat back. But but we have to start really seriously thinking about a candidate right now.
Ellie,
We
do
all
you
have a
agree?
couple of names in mind, I'm sure. Talk to them, beg them, plead. We've got to get a candidate, and the sooner the better.
Ellie, do you agree that the candidate should not announce until the 11th hour, or do you think it should be sooner?
At this point, I think it would be best if it were sooner so that we could begin. Everyone here this afternoon has spoken with great knowledge about how a campaign could be run. My thought is, let's go for it, folks. Let's get out there. We've got enough ammunition, and I hate using that word. Let me retract that word. We have enough information that we can use thanks to Joy's group and thanks to what Michael Finley's group has been doing. We're gathering enough information now that we can help a candidate. And I just think that we need to do this soon in order to give this candidate time to get out there. We're thinking, you can't think of just this area. Riverside County is big.
Michael,
This person's gonna have
you're
to get
waving
out
your
there with a
hand.
message.
Michael, are you waving your hand or?
I apologize. I'm at my work site. I was just acknowledging someone. I apologize.
Oh,
No.
all right, you're saying hello. Have I missed anybody in our final round? I don't think so. Tisa, did I miss you? Well, that's horrible. Tisa,
It's all good. So
Yeah.
just a couple of things is the reality right now is that as soon as someone files an exploratory, like the paperwork for an exploratory committee, they're out, whether they want to be out or not. So
Right.
it kind of doesn't matter if they wait till the last minute. They need to raise money now. So the second they file, they're out there, and they might even make national news. The only thing I would add to it is that I know we are still working on the lines for the Board of Supervisors, but we really need to stay on those because the power of the purse for the entire RSA contract, and frankly for the sheriff too, is with the Board of Supervisors. And there's a majority on the Board of Supervisors who think that they have a moral obligation to rubber stamp whatever he proposes, and that's not true. Not true at all. So we need to get the sheriff, and we need to get one more person on the Board of Supervisors. So that we can have a Democratic majority and compel them to actually take some real world looks at whatever this hopefully new sheriff is spending on.
thank you. All right, so I see a bunch of hands up. I'm gonna, yes, I see you, Dory.
Sorry.
So I'm gonna ask, you can ask questions of the whole panel or any one of them or some of them. So Dory, you go ahead and ask your question. Deborah Vogler, you're next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Raymond Gregory is on the call with us, and he's a Cathedral City Council member, and he retired from the Sheriff's Department. So I was hoping the group, Raymond might be willing to make some comments about this whole discussion.
Oh, Raymond, are you here?
He was there earlier.
Oh, well,
So-
okay.
So yes,
there he
I'm
is.
here.
There he
Oh,
is.
I'm here, and I'm listening earnestly and encouraged with all of the work that sounds like the thought that's gone into it and the work that's been done to get us to this point. Because I certainly do agree that there are issues, but I also agree that it's going to be quite difficult to make this type of change. It's no surprise that Bianco has catered to the membership. And that was one of the reasons the union didn't care for the incumbent that I worked more closely with before Bianco, was that although he certainly had his flaws and a progressive candidate did need to come in, that he did hold the line against giving in to some of the wants of the employee group, that because he felt that they weren't in the best interest of the public. Things like requiring blood tests and requiring following policies and professionalism and education, some of the things that have been mentioned. So that is not going to be an easy task, because they're going to do like they did last time, and they're going to show the deputies who are loved and generally do a good job, but they're going to show some of them on television or have them campaign, for Bianco. So I very much want to assist this group as much as I can. But I think a lot of what we heard is true, is realistic, and it's going to take a big effort. And so I'm encouraged to see that so much has been done already.
Well, Ray, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Are you considering running?
So I've been approached. Thank you so much. Many people have been very complimentary. I've actually been approached, surprisingly not by this group, but by some moderate Republicans. They have
good.
also asked me, but the problem is I really don't, I retired 4 years ago with the intention of not, not continuing in law enforcement. And so I am not seeking the job.
Okay. Deborah, do you
Yes.
have a question you want to direct at somebody? Thank you,
Well-
Ray. Thank you, Ray, very much for
Well, thank you so much for calling on.
coming to our group and talking to us. Go ahead, Deborah.
Well, actually, I wanted to make a comment. I believe it was based on something Michael said earlier. I can't remember now, but here's another tactic that I think we might approach, we might use. There was an article I read in 3/12/21 in the Desert Sun, and Bianco is quoted as saying, "There is absolutely nothing that the legislature will ever pass that is going to benefit public safety, really even benefit the public. Everything is to benefit the inmate." Now, this was around the time when they were discussing the like involuntary, the labor, the cheap wages that they pay to those who are jailed. Okay, so I feel that one of the things we need to at least get across to the public and say is, well, how is politicizing the debate going to produce reasonable solutions? Whatever happened to implementing practices that lead to greater public safety when inmates are eventually released? Rather than using inmates as cheap labor, I would much rather see that they are incentivized to never land back in jail or prison again. There must be a better way to ensure that inmates have productive things to do while incarcerated, thereby enhancing safety for correctional officers that don't involve meager wages at jobs that probably won't result in skills that will enhance their return to society. And that therefore would endanger the public's safety. But how are we ever going to arrive at such solutions if we have a sheriff who won't respect the legislative process, which involves reasoned discussion and collegial relations? So I think he's on record as saying this during that particular debate. So I feel like that's fair game. How can, that struck me in particular. So, it really stuck with me. So I feel like that's a missed opportunity to use his own words to prove that, hey, he doesn't want to work with anybody. And the legislature is elected by the people.
I agree. We are very honored to have an elected official here among us. The queen of, I would call it the queen of the donut hole in Palm Desert. Karina, there you are. Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. That
Yes.
cracks me up there. Thank you. I've been listening very intently, and I'm very thankful that so many brilliant points have been brought up. And I wanted to just echo a few sentiments that it's about his engagement with the community and his willingness to define for himself what he wants to do or not do. The fact that there was no hate crimes. Oh, sorry, my parent wants to participate. Excuse me. The fact that he said that there was no hate crimes that were committed, no charges were filed for hate crimes. That's an abomination to public safety and to the ability to serve the public. So I have a question in regards to the campaign. So obviously we know that we need to support someone, and it is a very fine line of when to announce. And I can see both of the pros and cons of either announcing right away or announcing later. My question is, any funds that are donated to Bianco Must Go, are those then potentially going to be used to endorse a candidate? Because there may be people that want to donate now, but may not know who the candidate will be, or if I can get any clarification on that, so we can all very comfortably keep spreading that information. And then also I have an ask, because I would like to know if there's any specific citizens-led group that is demanding accountability to meet with the sheriff. As a member of the CVAC Public Safety Commission, I know that several of us have asked repeatedly for such a group, and they said, no, they're going to do a panel. So having a panel talk is not the same as having a community forum. So I want to know if there's any active group of citizens that are working on that. And I also have some additional insight into department policies, and I'm not again sure if this is the proper place to share it, or who I could meet with to bring up some of these discussion points in terms of how the focus is on use of lethal force. And as Tisa mentioned, the way that this disproportionately impacts not only just communities of color, but individuals with disabilities. You know, in terms of being able to respond quickly, even hearing or speech limitations, there's so many different factors to consider. But when RSO trains officers repeatedly with lethal force being the most trained option, and that was the impression that I got this week after taking the tour. So again, just a few things to touch out on there. Today I've got to hop out early. We've got our grand opening in San Pablo. If anybody wants to hop in over the meeting and get some tacos and some sunshine and great vibes, and chat about districts and boundaries and demographics. And also, Tisa, if you, in looking at the proposed maps for the boundaries that are proposed, if any of those maps seem, in your opinion, to be more favorable than others?
So so the one that I have the most direct connection with is the United IE map, because it was specifically drawn with input from a number of different community groups. And if redistricting goes correct and according to the law, there will be 2 majority-minority districts in this county, in Western Riverside County. And it's the only one that actually follows the Voting Rights Act. It actually goes down through all of the demographic data and employs that right now. So right now, for me, that's the only legitimate set of maps, and everything else we'll see as it develops and as they have to go back and follow the law. Because the reality is they're either facing a lawsuit from the ACLU or they will follow the law and apply the law. What I will say about community groups is pretty much every community group I've talked to in the last 2 years has tried to work with Bianco to get him to appear, to have discussions, to have different kinds of groups, to compel him to do different kinds of groups. He will only do the one that he has control over and that he can decide when, how, and what they meet about. Everything else has been a zero-sum game, or he's magically been sick that day. It's a patent denial and choosing who he wants to work with and when. And frankly, I think he's more in it to talk than to listen.
Thank you, Tisa.
I do want to answer the question on Bianco Must Go. The idea of Bianco Must Go is to raise the funds for that candidate so that that candidate can step out and have a substantial fund, a war chest behind them, so that when the candidate in waiting does step out, they'll be covered with the cash. And we're working on raising 1.5 million right now.
Thank you, Joy. I see Lou and Sherry, is that right? With the raised hands, I'll take questions from the 2 of them in that order. And there is Patrick, so you can come after Sherry. Lou.
Okay, well, as you know, I'm kind of new here. I'm making my transition to Riverside County from Los Angeles County, but I do have a lot of political experience there. And we've dealt a lot with them. As former mayor, I've dealt a lot with our sheriffs all the time. As you know, in Los Angeles County now, we have a terrible sheriff. He's just as bad as the sheriff you have down here, maybe even worse. But I literally just got off the phone with Cecil Rambo, who is the police chief of LAX, and he's running against him. There are certain legal requirements that are necessary to run for sheriff. You need a certain amount of law enforcement experience, or certificates, et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line is, from my experience, candidates win elections. And we can all complain all we want, but that's not going to get somebody elected. You need to find somebody sooner rather than later. And I can't agree with Ellen more that, 8 months is not a lot of time for doing this. Cecil's been running for the last 6 months, and it's beginning to get support from various communities. That's how you get elected in this kind of a situation. And it isn't only money. I know money is obviously important. We all know that. But, Meg Whitman spent a ton of money and Jerry Brown, took her away. The bottom line is we need to find someone that you guys think is capable of being the sheriff of this county. And that has to be the most important thing that we address right now, I think.
I agree.
Jerry? Your question.
Hi, good afternoon. This is my first time with the group, so thank you for advertising the event and allowing people to ask questions.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here in a personal capacity, but professionally I'm the Human Resources and Risk Manager for the City of Banning. We are not a contract city with Riverside County. We have our own police force, but I just want to throw that out there. Are we aware if Bianco has, and I think Tisa might have already answered this, but we're not aware that Bianco has met with any Democratic or independent leaning group, and that he's only met with, as in, I think it was last night or the night before, the East Valley Federated, he was there. I want to make note about some other weaknesses. All 5 bargaining groups for Riverside County Sheriff's Department, all of their MOUs are expired, which is interesting because typically what does seem to happen is that the sheriff will provide more overtime or more additional funding to his staff when the MOUs are expired. And so that might be a potential weakness to find what type of expenditures year over year have been expensing out since he has taken over. Also wanted to ask, and this might be just some ignorance on my part. I've not been in the Valley too terribly long, just 7 years. But Brian Reyes, who was the outgoing chief of police at the Palm Springs Police Department, highly regarded on both sides of the aisle and down the middle of the aisle. Has he been engaged to either run or to support someone? And thirdly, I'll make this very quick. All the things that we felt as a weakness that the sheriff has are actually what fuels his support within his supporters.
Right.
So I would encourage us to find elements that everyone, and I think I don't have people's names down. I believe Stephen had already touched on that, but having these simultaneous different campaigns going, I think is a very smart idea. So thank you for taking my questions.
Can I answer on Brian Reyes?
Yes.
Please.
Okay, there are some folks that have come forward that are willing to talk with Brian. So far, he has said he is not interested. He is now, from what I understand, said, I'm not interested, but. So there are some people, a couple of folks in particular, that are approaching him to run. He would be the ideal candidate if he agrees. He has the experience and he's well liked. I won't take up any more time, but Sherry, yes, he has been approached.
Great. Thank you. Sherry, you're welcome back to any more of our meetings and to join DOD. We'd certainly love to have you. Thank you for your question. Anybody have any more questions? I see Anita. Oh, Patrick. Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, basically Sherry asked the question that I was going to ask about Police Chief Reyes and does the person who runs have to be have sheriff's experience only? Can they be of any law enforcement agency or an attorney or anything in that field to be able to run it as a sheriff? And what are their chances of winning if they're not a sheriff, don't have a sheriff's background?
Well, I can answer one of them. Any kind of sworn law enforcement duty is considered okay. You don't have to be a sheriff. You could have been a police chief or anything that a sworn law enforcement position. The attorney thing, I don't know. I've always wondered whether a prosecutor, which is obviously part of the law enforcement system, would fall in within the description, but I truly don't know the answer to that question. Maybe somebody smarter than me might know that. Rick Weingart, are you raising your hand for me?
I'd like to, if I could.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, actually, Joy has the answers to that question that was just posed. And I believe it's in an outline type form, because there's more than just you need to be a district attorney or you need to be on the police force. There's 5 or 6 different categories that go all the way back to GED that I know she and the group have been researching. So that's one key point. My point, thank you for letting me speak. Hello, everybody. Rick Weingart, Democratic Headquarters of the Desert. And we're looking at this whole program, Stephen, Michael, everybody who's involved, kind of on the outside. And I wanted to get this point across, and that is Democrats of the Desert, the other clubs operate mostly by get together once in a while in a PO box. Democratic Headquarters of the Desert is an actual building with actual staffers inside, and we're kind of like a fishbowl. So we look at these programs very, very efficiently, security conscious at all times to maintain our building and our staffers and our security. And how we see this is Bianco Must Go is an organization that is here to create and keep out front and educate people on Bianco and who this guy is and what he's about and all the distasteful things he does to, let's just say, the county. I'm going to be rather broad. Michael Finland's group was set up to find a candidate. And in all honesty, when we got Raul into office, and everybody knows Congressman Ruiz, we had to fight against Mary Bono. So what we did is we created a report card for her with an F+, and we had it on the windows at headquarters, and we did media releases. And every time she voted against something, we had a group that would research that and we would post it. We would send it out on social media. We would post it at headquarters. And we went and we took pictures of everything she voted against. And we kept that out front. I believe that Bianco Must Go, their job really is to keep flinging stuff at Bianco and the public, educate the public, because not everybody knows who Bianco is and that we even have a sheriff in Riverside County. I've been here for over 30 years, so I'm talking from a little of experience, and I'm also an emergency responder. The other thing is I would like to see the clubs, rather than dilute Bianco Must Go, their job again is to throw as much flack at the sheriff and make it public as possible. I would like to see DOD and the other Democratic clubs get behind finding a candidate. I truly believe you're not going to find a candidate in 7 months. Let's be realistic. I think this campaign is going to take 2 years. I think by the time you have somebody come out that the clubs vet him, certainly he needs to be a Democrat. I didn't hear that come up anywhere, but that's what we would like, and have the clubs base all their work or a lot of their work on finding the candidate, and Democrats of the Desert and the other clubs support Bianco Must Go as an organization. So rather than dilute it, because right now we have 40 people together and they're all over the place. I think that keeping the crap out on Bianco is really the most important now. I think that he will get elected in June because there's a whole lot of people who like him. Whether we like Brian Reyes or anybody else, there's a whole lot of people in Riverside County that think he is doing a good job. So I just wanted to bring that free and clear. Headquarters is watching the forest, not just the tree. And we think this is going to be a long campaign, and we support both groups. Thank you very much.
We're past 3. I'm willing to keep going. If anybody else wants to talk.
Anita has her hand up.
Yes, I see that. Anita?
I appreciate that. Thank you. I want to exhibit my total ignorance on this subject by way of asking a question that might help, especially given what Rick has just said. we elect judges, but they do have to respond to a higher authority at the state level. I understand we elect the sheriff, but who does the sheriff actually report to? Is there nobody, or including the supervisors, where we can bring public pressure to highlight the problems with Bianco?
Theoretically, the sheriff is an employee of any sheriff is an employee of the county in which that sheriff works. And he is supposed to be accountable to the supervisors, who are then in turn supposed to be accountable to the voters.
So then let me just ask, why?
Let me finish. In an ideal world, that works. In the real world, it doesn't. And it's not working, and that's why there's Villanuevas and Biancos sitting in the sheriff's department, because the supervisors, the supporters of most of the supervisors in Riverside County and the supporters of Bianco are a lot of the same people. So the supervisors don't want to slap him too hard because they fear offending the people that elect them. That's that is the political reality.
All I'm suggesting is, if it is the supervisors who ultimately have some authority over the sheriff, maybe people just need to start showing up at every supervisor's meeting on this issue. Maybe we need to bring some kind of pressure to show that there is a movement that is concerned about this particular elected official.
No. The other thing
Lisa
that
can
occurs to
answer
me-
this.
The other thing, I'll speak in that. The other thing that occurs to me is that you're right about judges. They have to respond to Commission on Judicial Performance if they screw up. There is no statewide body sitting at the top of the pyramid that oversees sheriff's departments.
And no law enforcement body either?
No. No sheriff's departments and no police departments. Maybe there should be a law enforcement oversight entity at the top of the state. But boy, I don't have to tell you what a job that would be to get created. People that know, but that is the answer to your question. Tisa, yeah.
So, I mean, there's layers of things that can be done. The basic answer, though, is really that the Board of Supervisors has the power of the purse. The problem is that for, a majority, their personal bank accounts are controlled by the same people who are supporting the sheriff.
Right.
So we really need at least one more seat. Having worked in the public sector for years and years, if you get a contract, you can put preconditions on contracts all the time. If it was me, I would be in there threatening to defund the police and throw that loaded term at them, and then put the preconditions in there and say, look, you got to do these things if you want to keep this funding. That's me. But we have to have at least one more Democrat, preferably two, to have the guts to actually do that, and who are not funded by the same backers. Because otherwise, it doesn't matter. We could bring 200, 300, 400 people to every single meeting.
Right.
And quite frankly, we're not cutting their checks, so they're not going to care, until we start, we all hit the lottery simultaneously and then buy Karen Spiegel. It just can't happen. But what we can do, if this is not, let's say we don't find a perfect candidate, and mind you, everything in my head is I don't think about running Republicans, period. So for me, it's always a Democrat, because I just don't run Republicans. I don't run no party preference. I only run Democrats. I don't need the most out there, exciting, brilliant Democrat. I just need a Democrat who is electable. And the second or third sheriff can be the most exciting progressive Democrat, because we just got to get one through the door, and it's got to be somebody who can do the job, not somebody exciting, somebody who can get elected and do the job. And that's about it at this time. It's a very low bar for me.
Thank you.
But what I will say about that is that the Hail Mary that is entirely achievable, but not right now, is there's a state law that was passed in the last cycle and signed in that allows us to compel this county to have our own commission that would not respond to the sheriff. It would be completely independent, but it takes time to do, and it's a separate process. It's something a lot of different groups would have to work on together, but it may be something we have to do anyway.
Well, that's a long-term project. Sherry and then Joy, and then maybe I'll wrap it up because this could probably go on for hours. But I think, all right, Sherry and then Joy, and then we'll close up. Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah. First of all, I can't wait to join as soon as we're done with this meeting today. I've not been a member. I absolutely will be a member today. Gentlemen had mentioned about having a scorecard of votes and so forth. And, ego is a very powerful thing. And we have at least 2 board of supervisors at Riverside County that have incredibly large egos, witnessed by the amount of TV time that they have. And an angle that would be effective in keeping Bianco in line until a suitable replacement candidate can be found is to press upon with a media type of, how do I say this? Having scorecards of the items that Riverside County supervisors are approving that are extra budgetal items that he has put forth, the amount of extra taxes that it's causing for citizens, and also the fact that the sheriff seems to assert that he has more power or is more powerful than the board of supervisors. And that is something that they would not want to hear. They wouldn't want publicized. They wouldn't want, you see, just usurping their power.
Yeah.
And it's not true. And it is legally untrue as well. Joy?
But he's practicing it.
Well, I'm
Yes.
aware of that, but
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to talk about the sheriff's reporting system. First of all, Newsom did sign, and Tisa did talk about this. Newsom did sign the power of the creation of an oversight board authorization to create that on a county level, but it's not a mandate to do it. In other words, the Board of Supervisors could decide to go ahead and install an office of the inspector. The other thing that happened in September was SB 2, which allows for a decertification for excessive use of force, that the Attorney General could identify, could bring a case against the sheriff for issues of excessive use of force. I think it's one of the reasons why the ACLU put their letter forward to Rob Bonta. So as Bianco Must Go is targeting the sheriff right now, the PAC RASA will then put our sights onto that supervisor that we need in order to get that balance to move forward on those issues. That is our plan.
all right. Well, thank you. I see hands up, but I'm going to wrap it up. If everybody wants to hang around here and talk, I'm going to leave the meeting open, but I don't want to take everybody's time here. We're over. I think this has been a terrific exchange, and I'm not that easily impressed very often, but this was a very good meeting. And I want to thank all 4 of the panelists for extremely insightful and valuable comments. I think that we have inspired, I hope, some members to actually do something along the way. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to leave the room open. Anybody want to sit here and talk some more?
I have a quick announcement I'd just like to make. First of all,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for all our panelists. And it was sensational. This is actually an inspiring meeting. I just wanted to let you know that on November 14th, this very good friend of mine, a member of the DNC, who is running against Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's going to be here in the Valley. On November 14th, from 10 to 11:30, we're going to have some kind of an event. We don't even know the location just yet, but I've talked to Elle about it and Melissa, and so we'll let you all know about it. But it's time to remove that woman from Congress, and we have an excellent candidate that can do it.
Well,
And
Lou, let
thank
me
you.
know and we will blast it out
Okay,
to
terrific.
our
Thank you.
members. No,
I'll
we'll be
see you
glad.
on Monday, Lou. I'll
Yes.
see you Monday. All right.
All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
You.
Yes, thank you, everybody. If you want to stay, I'm going to leave the room open for a while.
Thank you, everyone. It's great seeing you.